September 29th. On this day, a legendary Roman general met a tragic fate in exile. One of the deadliest massacres of the Holocaust began. Modern science gained a powerful new home, and the global economy shook to its very core. Yes, September 29th is packed with events that changed the world forever. But before we dive into today's journey through history, if you love exploring the past and uncovering the stories that shaped our world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Every day, we bring history to life right here. Let's go back more than 2,000 years to one of the most dramatic turning points in Roman history. Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, better known to us as Pompey the Great, wasn't just any Roman general. He was once hailed as one of the greatest military leaders of his time. By his early 30s, he had already celebrated multiple triumphs in Rome, defeating pirates in the Mediterranean, expanding Roman influence in the East, and cementing his reputation as a hero of the Republic. But power in Rome was always fragile, and allies could turn into enemies overnight. Pompey had once been a close partner of Julius Caesar, forming part of the famous First Triumvirate alongside Marcus Crassus. Together, they dominated Roman politics. But when Crassus died, tensions between Caesar and Pompey spiraled into open rivalry. The Roman Republic became divided. Senators chose sides, legions marched against each other, and civil war erupted. Pompey, backed by much of the Senate and claiming to defend the Republic, faced Caesar in battle. But in 48 BC, at the Battle of Pharsalus in Greece, Caesar's forces decisively defeated Pompey's much larger army. Desperate and on the run, Pompey fled to Egypt, hoping to find refuge and perhaps rebuild his power with the help of Egypt's young king, Ptolemy XIII. But instead of receiving protection, he was betrayed. On September 29th, as he stepped off his ship, Pompey was stabbed to death by assassins acting under Ptolemy's orders, an attempt to curry favor with Julius Caesar. The assassination shocked the ancient world. When Caesar himself arrived in Egypt and was presented with Pompey's severed head, he reportedly wept. Despite their rivalry, Caesar respected Pompey as a Roman statesman and a fellow general. Pompey's murder didn't bring peace, it only deepened the crisis. With him gone, Caesar became the unrivaled power in Rome, and the Republic's decline accelerated. Within just a few years, Rome would no longer be a republic at all. It would transform into an empire under Caesar's heir, Augustus. So, the death of Pompey on September 29th wasn't just the fall of one man. It marked the fall of an entire political system that had stood for centuries. September 29th, 1789, marked a defining moment in the young history of the United States. On this day, the very first United States Congress officially created a standing army under the newly ratified Constitution. Now, to appreciate the importance of this decision, we need to rewind just a few years. During the American Revolutionary War, the Continental Army, led by George Washington, had fought tirelessly for independence. But once the war was over, there was deep suspicion among Americans about keeping a permanent army in peacetime. Many feared that a large, centralized military could become a tool of tyranny, just like the Redcoats had been under British rule. For several years after independence, the United States relied mostly on state militias. But the weaknesses of that system soon became clear. the young nation faced threats on multiple fronts: conflicts with Native American nations in the Northwest Territory, tensions with Britain and Spain, and even unrest at home, like Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts. Without a professional, organized military, the United States was vulnerable. So, in 1789, with the ink barely dry on the Constitution, Congress made a bold and necessary choice. They passed the act that established the United States Army as a permanent institution. It was small, at first just a few hundred soldiers, but it represented something far larger: the beginning of an organized national defense force that would grow alongside the nation itself. Over the centuries, the U.S. Army would expand from those humble beginnings into one of the most powerful and influential military forces the world has ever known. It would play pivotal roles in wars of independence, in global conflicts, in peacekeeping missions, and in shaping the modern world. And it all began on September 29th, 1789 a day, when America decided that its survival and security required more than militias. It required a professional army. September 29th, 1887, marks a turning point in the history of music and sound. On this day, German-born inventor Emil Berliner was granted a patent for a groundbreaking device he called the gramophone. Unlike earlier inventions, such as Thomas Edison's phonograph, which recorded sound on fragile cylinders, Berliner's gramophone used flat discs. These discs, what we now know as records, were easier to produce, easier to duplicate, and far more durable. Think about the impact of that innovation. For the first time in human history, music wasn't something you could only hear live in a concert hall or a parlor. It could now be recorded, reproduced, and shared with countless people around the world. The gramophone made it possible for music to travel across borders, across oceans, and across generations. In the late 19th century, Berliner's invention seemed almost magical, capturing voices, songs, and sounds in a way that could be replayed again and again. This technology didn't just create an industry, it created an entirely new culture. Families would gather around gramophones in their living rooms, listening to opera, symphonies, or popular songs of the day. For the first time, ordinary people had access to the same performances as the wealthy elite. From those early flat discs came vinyl records, jukeboxes, and eventually cassette tapes, CDs, and even today's streaming platforms. Every playlist, every podcast, every digital song we listen to today can trace its roots back to September 29th, 1887, when Emil Berliner's gramophone opened the door to recorded sound as we know it. In a very real sense, modern music was born on this day. September 29th, 1911. Italy made a bold move that would change the map of North Africa. On this day, Italy declared war on the Ottoman Empire, launching what became known as the Italo-Turkish War. At first glance, it might seem like just another regional conflict, but in reality, this war signaled the beginning of the end for Ottoman control in North Africa and revealed the growing ambitions of modern European powers. Italy, a relatively young nation at the time, wanted to prove itself on the global stage. Its leaders eyed Libya, then under Ottoman rule, as a potential colony, rich in resources, and strategically important for influence in the Mediterranean. The Ottomans, on the other hand, were already struggling to maintain their vast empire, weakened by internal challenges and external pressures. The war quickly escalated, and it became one of the first conflicts to showcase the use of modern military technology. Airplanes were used for reconnaissance and even bombing runs, the very first time in history that aircraft played a role in warfare. Submarines were also deployed, marking a shift toward the future of modern combat. For the local populations in Tripolitania and Cyrenaica, however, the war was brutal. Civilians found themselves caught between colonial ambition and imperial decline. Despite resistance, the Ottoman forces were stretched thin, and by 1912, the war ended with the Treaty of Auchi. Italy officially gained control of Libya, cementing its place among Europe's colonial powers. But the war's significance didn't stop there. The Italo-Turkish conflict became a precursor to even greater upheavals. The Ottoman Empire's weakening grip on its territories emboldened movements in the Balkans and elsewhere, setting the stage for the Balkan Wars and ultimately the First World War. So when we look back at September 29, 1911, we see more than a colonial war. We see a moment when technology, imperial ambition, and the decline of an empire collided, reshaping history in ways that echoed far beyond the deserts of North Africa. September 29, 1923, another turning point in world history. On this day, the British mandate for Palestine officially went into effect, following a decision by the League of Nations. At the time, it might have seemed like just another colonial administrative change. But in reality, it laid the groundwork for one of the most complex and enduring conflicts of the modern era. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, leaving a power vacuum across the Middle East. The victorious Allied powers carved up the territories, and Britain took control of Palestine. Under the mandate system, Britain was supposed to govern the land until its people were ready for independence. But the reality was far more complicated. Palestine was home to diverse communities, Arab Muslims, Christians, and a growing Jewish population. The Jewish migration had already begun decades earlier, inspired by Zionist movements calling for a homeland in the land of their ancestors. At the same time, the Arab population, who had lived there for centuries, feared displacement and the loss of their own national aspirations. Britain now found itself in the middle of competing promises. During the war, the British had made the famous Balfour Declaration, supporting the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. But they had also promised independence to Arab leaders who fought against the Ottomans. These conflicting commitments fueled tensions from the very start. Over the next 2 decades, clashes grew between Jewish and Arab communities, as well as resistance against British rule. The Mandate period saw waves of immigration, uprisings, and political struggles. What began on September 29, 1923, as an international administrative arrangement, evolved into the foundation of today's Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So, when we reflect on this date, we don't just see a piece of colonial history. We see the start of a story that continues to shape headlines, politics, and lives across the Middle East and the world. The British Mandate for Palestine reminds us that the legacies of past decisions don't simply fade, they ripple forward, influencing generations yet to come. September 29, 1938. Europe stood at the edge of catastrophe. In Munich, Germany, world leaders gathered to decide the fate of Czechoslovakia. The result of their meeting became one of the most infamous examples of political compromise in modern history, the Munich Agreement. Adolf Hitler had already annexed Austria earlier that year, and now he turned his sights on the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a significant ethnic German population. Hitler claimed these people were being mistreated and insisted that the territory must join Germany. But everyone knew the truth. This was not about protecting minorities. It was about expanding Nazi power. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, French Premier Édouard Daladier, Italian leader Benito Mussolini, and Hitler himself sat down to negotiate. Notice who wasn't invited: the Czechoslovaks, the very people whose land and sovereignty were at stake. In a matter of hours, decisions were being made that would change their nation forever. The Munich Agreement handed the Sudetenland to Germany without a single shot being fired. Chamberlain famously returned to Britain, proclaiming that he had secured peace for our time. Crowds cheered him as a hero who had averted war. But in reality, the deal only bought Hitler more time to grow stronger. For Czechoslovakia, it was a betrayal. Their defenses were stripped away, their sovereignty ignored, and within months, Hitler broke his promises and took over the rest of the country. The Munich Agreement didn't stop war. It practically guaranteed it. Just 1 year later, Germany invaded Poland, and World War II began. Today, the term Munich has become a warning in global politics. It symbolizes the dangers of appeasement, of giving in to aggressors in the hope they'll be satisfied. History showed that Hitler was never going to stop at Sudetenland. September 29, 1938, reminds us that peace built on compromise with tyranny is rarely true peace at all. September 29, 1941, one of the darkest days of the Second World War. On this date, Nazi forces carried out one of the largest mass shootings of the Holocaust at a ravine near Kyiv, Ukraine. The place was called Babi Yar. In the weeks leading up to the massacre, the German army had occupied Kyiv. They blamed the city's Jewish community for acts of resistance and sabotage, accusations with no real proof, but used as justification for ruthless violence. Notices appeared around the city, ordering all Jews to gather with their belongings. Many believed they were being relocated. Families brought food, clothes, even children's toys. They did not know they were marching to their deaths. When the men, women, and children arrived at Babi Yar, they were stripped of their possessions, forced to undress, and led to the edge of the ravine. There, Einsatzgruppen Nazi death squads, along with local collaborators, opened fire. Over the course of just 2 days, September 29th and 30th, nearly 34,000 Jewish men, women, and children were murdered. Their bodies tumbled into the ravine, one layer after another, a horrifying pit of human loss. But Babi Yar did not end with those 2 days. Over the next 2 years, the site became a killing ground for tens of thousands more Roma people, Soviet prisoners of war, and Ukrainian civilians. In total, it is estimated that over 100,000 lives were extinguished there. For decades, the Soviet Union tried to suppress the memory of Babi Yar, refusing to acknowledge the massacre as a specifically Jewish tragedy. It wasn't until the 1960s that poets and writers, most famously Yevgeny Yevtushenko, brought global attention back to the ravine and the voices silenced there. Today, Babi Yar stands as a symbol of Holocaust memory, a reminder of what happens when hatred and dehumanization are left unchecked. September 29, 1941, is not just a date in history, it is a warning to humanity about the depths of cruelty and the importance of remembrance. Because forgetting is the first step to repeating. On September 29, 1954, Europe witnessed the birth of a scientific powerhouse, CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. Nestled on the border of Switzerland and France, CERN was established with one clear mission: to explore the fundamental particles that make up our universe. The post-World War II era was a time of rebuilding, not just for cities and economies, but also for knowledge. European scientists, inspired by curiosity and collaboration, sought to reclaim leadership in cutting-edge physics research. CERN became a hub where nations could come together, setting aside politics to pursue the universal language of science. The organization started with relatively modest equipment and a vision bigger than any individual country could manage. Particle accelerators were designed, detectors built, and experiments launched, all aimed at uncovering the building blocks of matter. CERN's discoveries would eventually include some of the most important breakthroughs in modern physics, including confirming the existence of the Higgs boson decades later. But CERN's significance goes beyond the lab. It fostered collaboration across borders, demonstrating that when humans unite in curiosity and purpose, remarkable achievements are possible. The organization became a beacon of peaceful scientific progress, a place where knowledge transcends national boundaries, and where the mysteries of the universe are approached with rigor, imagination, and a sense of wonder. Today, when we look at CERN, we see more than giant circular accelerators and high-tech detectors. We see the enduring spirit of inquiry that drives humanity forward. The events of September 29, 1954, remind us that curiosity can reshape the world, one experiment at a time. On September 29, 1962, Canada achieved a remarkable milestone in space exploration, the launch of Alouette 1, the country's first satellite and one of the earliest non-superpower satellites to orbit Earth. At a time when the space race was dominated by the United States and the Soviet Union, Alouette 1's launch demonstrated that smaller nations could also make significant contributions to science and technology. Its primary mission was to study the ionosphere, the upper layer of Earth's atmosphere, filled with charged particles that affect radio communications and navigation systems. Canadian scientists and engineers collaborated across universities, research institutions, and the newly formed Space Agency to design a robust satellite capable of surviving the harsh conditions of space. Alouette 1 transmitted valuable data that advanced our understanding of atmospheric physics and helped improve global communications infrastructure. Beyond the scientific achievements, Alouette 1 symbolized national pride and innovation. Canada became the third country in the world to design and launch its own satellite, after the USSR and the USA, proving that ingenuity and collaboration could put any nation on the map of space exploration. Every time we think about the satellites orbiting Earth today, we can trace back a part of their lineage to Alouette 1, a small Canadian satellite that opened the door to a lifetime of discoveries, international cooperation, and a new chapter in humanity's journey into space. September 29th, 1962, is a reminder that even in the shadow of giants, vision and determination can make a country reach for the stars. On September 29, 2008, the world witnessed one of the most dramatic days in modern financial history. Following the collapse of major institutions like Lehman Brothers, the Dow Jones Industrial Average experienced its largest single-day point drop up to that time, sending shockwaves across global markets. This wasn't just a number on a screen. It represented millions of investors, families, and businesses suddenly facing uncertainty and fear. Banks froze lending, businesses struggled to operate, and everyday people saw their savings and retirement funds plummet in value. The crisis was rooted in years of risky financial practices, particularly in the housing and mortgage markets, where complex financial instruments masked deep vulnerabilities. When the housing bubble burst, it triggered a chain reaction: banks failing, credit markets freezing, and governments scrambling to stabilize the system. Policymakers around the world took urgent action: emergency bailouts, unprecedented central bank interventions, and economic stimulus packages to prevent a complete collapse of the global financial system. Yet, the impact was felt for years. Millions lost jobs, home foreclosures skyrocketed, and trust in financial institutions was deeply shaken. September 29th, 2008 serves as a stark reminder of how interconnected the global economy is, and how quickly a financial crisis can ripple across nations. It also underscored the importance of oversight, regulation, and vigilance to protect against systemic risk. This day was not just a market crash, it was a pivotal moment that reshaped modern finance and the way we understand economic stability. So there you have it, September 29th, a day of triumphs, tragedies, and turning points. From the fall of Pompey to the birth of the U.S. Army, from the horrors of Babi Yar to the scientific breakthroughs at CERN, history has never been short of lessons. Thanks for joining me on today's journey through time. Tomorrow, we'll uncover the stories of another remarkable day in history. See you then.